we're back. Heather,
Eric,
great to see you back. Thanks for coming.
thanks for having me.
For those who don't know, we did a video a couple weeks ago, and my audio decided to cut out partway through it. So we lost 30 or 40 minutes of our talk. So we're here to pick back up where we left off. So like I said, thank you. I appreciate for you stopping back out.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, I'm not a stranger to audio, visual issues, so it's okay.
Yeah, don't you do some of that for Farm Credit?
Yeah, a while back I started that kind of learning from doing. I had a guy we hired, and I learned actually a lot from him to almost kind of do a lot of the work that he did. And then started doing it on my own, which was really like a big
promotion, or you just do stuff for your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for own. Well, there was a handful of videos, probably I want to say 6 to 8 I did for Farm Credit that promote the Northeast agriculture in various ways, and all of those techniques of how to interview successfully, how to shoot B-roll, right, which is kind of the scenic imagery you interplay with the actual interview with someone, right, that kind of explains or gives something more than just looking at the person who's being interviewed, but B-roll that kind of lays over that to show kind of the scenery around. So all of that I learned from his name's Joe Ligon. He's down in South Carolina, and we usually bring him up for Farm Credit. Excellent guy. Done it for a lot of years. Used to work for ESPN and kind of moved to various places with kind of his own production company, and then I ended up doing it for Farm Credit after I learned a bit from him.
So he didn't actually work for Farm Credit. He's like a
contract worker.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. That's kind of neat.
It is. Yeah. So I learned so much from him. He's been a great teacher, and now I've been able to do some promotional stuff for not only dairy but for Northeast Ag, which has been great.
That's cool. Where are your videos? I didn't know you made.
They're under Farm Credit as a Farm Credit name.
I just go to I go to your website and I can find them.
Mm-hmm. Oh. So we've done one, say, for our benchmark programs. I remember seeing one actually recently come back up for National Cranberry Day back in November that I went out to a bog in Massachusetts to shoot them harvesting one day. And they had posted, we made it probably a minute video to promote like cranberry harvest in the Northeast and just overlay some facts and whatever. But it's just kind of fun to play around with Adobe and see what you can do with it. So it's really learning by doing.
Adobe is pretty cool. I use that a little bit, and it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty intuitive. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's definitely a learning curve to it, but it's pretty easy to make whatever type of production you want with the software. But with the cranberry bogs, those are kind of neat. Mm-hmm. I've never seen one. I've seen like videos. You have like the whole flooded. Well, they flood them and they take the water out depending.
Mm-hmm. It's like a rotational flood when it's time to harvest. So the berries float to the top and they can harvest them, and then they kind of corral them towards this chute that sucks them up and puts them into a big truck and brings them to whatever facility they'll be used at.
Is there a lot of that in Massachusetts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty big. So New Jersey as well, which I didn't know, but Massachusetts is really big for cranberry. And then I think Wisconsin is the biggest of them all.
Really?
Like puts us to shame. Absolutely. I think it's Wisconsin. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's obviously you got to do it in the summertime. You can't do it in the winter, but
well, it is November actually. It's
really?
cold when it's being harvested. Yeah, sometimes it freezes over and they lose a pretty big crop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. This is all new to me.
I know.
So they harvest it in November. Yeah. So I mean, Northeast, you could easily have an early nasty cold spell and
absolutely
freeze over.
Yep, and then you lose a pretty significant number of your crop, but.
I'm surprised Wisconsin too. That's crazy. You'd think it'd be down south.
Mm-hmm. I know, where something wouldn't have that impact, but
maybe it's is it too warm where the cranberry's sensitive to
Yeah.
like too. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know why. I mean, I just
Pests
grew up in
whatnot.
Mass, and just we felt like we were always kind of the cranberry state, and I never really thought much past that.
No idea. Where are they? Near the coast? Or are they all over?
Yeah, so we're out near Cape Cod, out near the coast. That way, there's a lot of old cranberry bogs.
But they don't need salt water. It's all fresh.
Yes.
Fresh water. Interesting.
Yeah.
Never want to be a cranberry farmer then.
No, I don't. But I admire them. But I can tell you they have a lot of the same challenges as dairy farmers, because somebody like Ocean Spray, their cooperative, they work with, and they kind of set the price for the barrel, and you hope you're kind of in the A group, if you will, because they get paid most per barrel. But if you have an oversupply, right, you have quite a cut on what you get for your barrels of cranberries. And kind of is a seniority system from what I've learned, in that if you kind of are in that A group, you'll always be there until you decide that you're going to go out, or somebody else kind of moves into that spot. Wow. I could also be totally wrong there, but that was my 5 years ago, as I did an internship out in the Middleborough office. This was like, I went to one of the meetings actually at Ocean Spray to hear kind of how they market the new products they were coming up with, and what they as a cooperative do for their customers. And it just felt like a really inspiring, really fun way to learn more about Ocean Spray. And like I think it was called Pact. It was a new cranberry drink that they were coming out with that promotes health, all that good stuff. They were just trying different ways to be innovative with their cranberry products, because a huge majority of cranberries is right around Thanksgiving. And then
that makes
other
sense.
than that, it's really hard to get them off the shelf.
Yeah, I can't think of many people like just drink cranberry juice on a daily basis. Like, it's not like grape or orange juice where it's...
Or like bar, you must drink it at a bar, right? When they splash something, like a splash of cran, good for them.
And I'm not a fan of cranberry juice at all. I think most people probably really aren't, or maybe just we never drank it enough to really acquire a taste for it. I don't know. Huh. Well, that's neat. Like I said, I would have never guessed that. Like you see the commercials for like Ocean Spray, and they're out in the middle of the water, and I never knew that. I figured it down, the Carolinas or somewhere where it's a much easier climate to work in. But learn something new every day.
That's right. The kicker is they're all actors, and that was such a disappointment when I learned that in all the commercials. They're
really?
not real farmers, and I was like, "Come on!" But our farmers are like fantastic people. Why wouldn't you include them?
How could they not get an actual cranberry farmer to
Who
stand out in the
knows?
middle of their water?
I know. Well, they can, and that's the beauty of going out to shoot your own stuff. Is I admire that, and I respect, and I want to show actual people doing actual work. So you don't really get that from maybe some other hiring agencies. But
they gotta look the part, I guess.
I'm definitely an amateur videographer, so I can
Sounds
tell
like
you
know
I'm
more
going
than
to
I
use
do.
it.
I should have you come over and help me.
No, you can teach me some lessons. I think the setup here is pretty awesome.
Thanks.
Anyway, I'm digressing here. Where were we supposed to start?
Yeah, that was an add-on. So, you were a part of the Young Dairy Leaders Institute, correct?
Actually, we were talking about that, which actually is a good segue, because when I started to begin doing this videography work and started learning from Joe, I said, well, hey, we are in this program called YDLI, Young Dairy Leaders, and I wanted to do a promotional video to promote our farm day. So we're a farm in Massachusetts, right?
Your home farm?
My home farm in Massachusetts, 250 head or so. And bring the community in, have a day on the farm, have people come in, serve ice cream, make grilled cheeses, have tours, all those fun things. But how are we going to promote that? So I did a sit-down interview with my grandfather, who actually just before Christmas last year passed away. So I can tell you that is some pretty genuine, heartfelt footage that I'm looking forward to going back through at some point. But really a grandpa who talked about his life on the farm, how it grew over time. And I'm just sitting there because I asked Grandpa one question, and 30 minutes later, who knows where the conversation went? And I don't even remember the question I asked. God bless him, right? But that content of him working on the farm, my dad going down and doing chores every day, that kind of stuff is the 1-minute promotional video we put out for the introduction and promotion of the event. So backing up, Young Dairy Leaders, what is it? So it's a program that's been around at least, I would say, for 20, 25 years at this point. And I was class 10. It's a 2-year cycle or so.
Okay.
And this program has 3 phases for aspiring young dairy leaders. Very similar to just kind of that, I would say, a premium leadership program in the Northeast, or in the North America, really, that's focused on dairy kids. So it brings you together for 3 phases.
So it's people from all over North America, you said?
Mm-hmm. And actually Canada and Mexico are included as well.
Okay.
And in that 2-year time, you go down south in February, right? So it's a great time to get away from the Northeast.
Yeah.
And that phase 1 focuses on yourself. It says, look, there's a lot of learning sessions where you figure out who you are. And I feel like at this point we've gone through a lot of them, but you always take those different nuggets away of how you interact with others when you're in a hot state or a cold state, meaning your natural self or your high stress, anxiety self. And the more you learn about yourself that way, the more you know how to better interact with others, how to resolve your weaknesses in different situations. And so there's a lot of that introspective thinking, I guess, throughout that time. And a lot of sessions, a lot of speakers. And then throughout that next year is what we would call phase 2, where you have lots of pieces of your roadmap that involve reaching out to your legislature, planning this ag advocacy event like the one we did at the farm, writing letters to Congress, getting involved in your community, and giving a talk to people who are non-ag related, right, to a group that doesn't know anything about dairy. So really pushes you out of your comfort zone to say, here's kind of your milestones, like one big thing a month as you go along to kind of help spread out that burden, I guess, if you will, if you are a really busy person, have a lot going on.
And they keep on top of it. Like,
yes, they say, it's due by the 1st of the month. So submit what you've done, whether it's something written or the email you sent to your legislature.
How do you do the one where you talk to people who know nothing about like agriculture or dairy?
We reach out to somebody in our community. I remember one guy in my class reached out to like a local like mommy baby walking group and said like, hey, I want to sit down with you guys before you go on your like fitness walking hike. And he talked about the benefits of milk and how it's such a complete food, and talked about, those that are lactose intolerant and the options they have. So, and really debunked a lot of the myths about agriculture, because there's so much media that really does a disservice to ag. Mm-hmm. And it's a super help to have people who are not only well-versed, but choose to speak up. And that's what YDLI gives you the confidence to do. So then you go back for phase 3. So you kind of say, like, present your ag advocacy project. You hear from others what they've learned for the program. And it's a super lot of fun, because you not only reconnect with that network that you made, but it's more sessions, more speakers that really keep honing in on like the hot topics of agriculture.
Do you think you changed in any, like, you felt like you got to change, like, that when you went in day 1 versus the end of year 2, you had a better grasp on speaking, or? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It was beneficial.
Absolutely. I would say that it's a program that you say, geez, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time for this.
Yeah,
but when you have a committed timeline, because we all know we're all procrastinators. If somebody doesn't give me, this is the due date, I'm right. And if I don't make one for myself, I probably will procrastinate in some things, right? But it allows you to space it out, stay focused on the different dairy related advocacy projects you can do, and keeps you moving.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And do you still, I think last time we talked, you said you still like assist with the program?
Mm-hmm. So I've gone back probably for the last at least 5 years now as an advisor to the program. Well, I was in the class for a couple years, And then this should be my second or third year going back as an advisor. Last year, because of COVID, we put everything on hold. So we said, in this time, instead of doing nothing, let's think about how we can make this program relevant for the next 10 years down the road. What are people going to be thinking about? What are they going to be, progressing towards? What kind of hot topics like sustainability, right, is always the big topic, or animal welfare, or all the other or greenhouse gas emissions, right? They're kind of all linked in some way. But how do you proactively address them and stay in front of the social media that is consumed by a lot of different people on an everyday basis? So we're bringing in actually some people to speak on that this coming year, kind of as a new, different way to mix it up from previous years.
Yeah, definitely. I think attacking social media on all fronts is the best way. That's really where, let's be honest, young people, where do they get a lot of their information from? Mm-hmm. Facebook, Instagram, wherever else, Snapchat, who knows? Mm-hmm. So I've always thought you need to hammer those, still do our traditional, outreach and all that. But I think if we really want to reach the segment we can still kind of mold, their minds are still, they haven't completely made up their mind yet. The young high school kids, social media is the best way to really hammer stuff home to them. I don't, what do you think?
Absolutely, Eric. How do you make agriculture sexy? I think we talked about that last time. It's how you make something that feels like, the tired got milk that's been the same for 100 years. Bodies by Milk has been tried. Or Fuel Up to Play 60 has been a really great program to get youth involved in it. But it doesn't feel like it's got the energy. It doesn't feel like it has the vibe that you need for a TikTok to go viral. So who do you target? How do you get new minds involved? And so the hope is to bring in people. Actually, this next class, I'm going to name drop here. Emily Shaw, she's known on Instagram as Dairy Girl Fitness. Fantastic advocate for agriculture, has really engaging videos, has her own it's very focused on health, but it always is supported by bringing healthy dairy products, including dairy in your diet. She does a fantastic job. Very good friends with her sister, who was in my YDLI class a handful of years ago. And looking forward to having her in the class to almost be hey, this is how I got started.
Oh, so she's not just coming as like a speaker.
No, she's coming to continue to build on her skills too.
So that's someone good to have in your pocket then. Mm-hmm.
So I think, I'm actually looking forward to picking your brain, saying how do you gain followers? How much time and effort do you put in a week to gain your followers? Make these fun, engaging videos when, you also kind of have a full-time job.
Yeah, people don't realize, even doing something like this, I know you've done, like you said, with your farm credit videos, it's fun to do, but it's still work. Like, you have a job, I'm working at the farm. Mm-hmm. There's lots of times you get done at 8. It's 9 o'clock at night, you eat dinner. It's like, I got to do some editing. It's just like, man.
I don't really feel like doing that.
It's like you have to do it. You want to get it out. You put the time in to get it. So, it's definitely, some of these people who do this stuff every day, God,
mm-hmm. But you have to like it.
If you have
work or you have a hobby, it's so much easier when you really like it.
Yeah. Like, I like doing it, so it's just, you get those days just like, I get in the groove and I'm like, bam, 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 get it out. Mm-hmm. But then there's just that you have a long day and it's like, I need to get this out. I got to do it. All right, I'll just sit down, get it out, get it done. But yeah, I know, I enjoy doing. I couldn't imagine doing this thing on a daily basis, and you're like multiple times a week trying to crank out videos. That's just, it's a lot of time.
It is. It is. Yeah.
People come to expect. I imagine I've never had this issue. I just put them out when I get the time, but I can imagine if you have a huge following, or if you're like constantly putting out videos and suddenly it stops. People, where's your videos? Why aren't you putting it out?
I'm looking for content.
Yeah,
right.
And suddenly, you got to feed the masses, or you just,
That's
tough.
When you start something new, whether it's a podcast or a social media platform or whatever, it feels like you almost need 6 months of content before you get started to say, whoa, what if this becomes popular? How much time am I going to be able to dedicate to this? Because there's going to be days where you come home and say, I really don't feel like doing this.
Yeah.
But that said, it's got to be content that can be pretty timeless. Otherwise, you're going to get into hey, this doesn't feel timely. This doesn't feel relevant to people. What does it matter?
Yeah.
So.
And they always, you always have to have a smile on your face. You don't want to be a miserable looking.
Right.
You don't want to look miserable, and people aren't going to watch them anyway. And that's why I tell people I just do this for fun, and
exactly.
It is what it is. If people don't like it, okay,
that's fine. Don't have to listen to it.
You don't have to watch it. Yeah,
exactly. They're like, why is she on again? We already listened to her. Take her off of there.
I love you, Heather. Don't you say from the last video someone contacted you about Ireland or something like that?
Yeah, actually.
That's the weird things that happen from this. It's really strange that Yeah, go ahead.
A beautiful connection. I had a friend of a friend reach out. One of my college roommates, she has a connection that said, hey, my younger sister is going to Ireland. Would she be able to reach out and
cool
and chat? So
yeah, it's weird the little nuances that people I'll put their video out, and not everyone, but once in a while, be like, hey, I got an email from someone asking me about this and this. It's because of your videos. Oh, cool. Nice. You never know where it's gonna go or who's listening. That's usually the more fun thing.
Yeah, I got a question at work this last week. You've never milked cows? And I was like, oh, I knew it. I said, I never should have said it. I said, I'm trying to play the angle that I was smart. Because once you learn, you'll never go back. I'll just keep trying to play that angle.
People hear, I never milk cows. I think they just kind of tune the rest out. But I guess going on with the whole public speaking, you were also in a group called Toastmasters, right? Yes.
And I think that program has given me a lot more confidence from an advocacy standpoint and continuing to be involved in YDLI, because it gives you the confidence to put your words together, to speak fluently, to not get overwhelmed when you are faced with a hard question. Am I good? Am I really good at it? No, but it gives you the confidence to say, hey, I've done this before. You don't necessarily have to be lured into the people that are very emotionally active and negative towards what you do in agriculture. What you can do is restate the benefits or restate the positive things that agriculture can do. And sometimes you will not change their mind. So as much as you would like to speak and advocate your position, sometimes the best is to say, let's agree to disagree.
Yeah. Find them. Yeah. You got your idea. I got mine. Let's go our separate ways. Yeah. No, you can't change everyone's mind.
Right. But Toastmasters itself, it's a fantastic program. I have a coworker, Chris Lawton, who year one at Farm Credit. I was saying I'd like to get better at public speaking. And he said, hey, Heather, well, I'm in this group called Toastmasters. And I said, okay, so do we hang out and drink beer, Chris? How does this work? He said, no, it's actually kind of a speaking group. You work on your confidence speaking. I said, okay, so let me show up and see what happens at one of these meetings. I think the best way to describe it is to briefly outline what actually happens at a meeting. You show up, you actually have different roles of the people that visit.
You just show up.
Yep, you show up. Okay. You can advertise. They have an official Toastmaster International website because it's a worldwide thing, and different area clubs you can be involved in. So when you show up, they have different functionary roles that people play throughout the meeting. So some people will come with prepared speeches, which they will give to that meeting. But there's also functionaries. You have a Toastmaster of the meeting who kind of acts as your MC to get things kicked off, to welcome your guests. You have 3 functionaries, which is the tag team, we call them. So there's the timer, the counter, and the grammarian. So believe it or not, timer, right, keeps track of, hey, you've said your 5 to 7 minute speech. Literally hold up timing cards because timing is important. You have the counter who actually counts your ums, so's, you knows, buts, Xeroxes, which is a new term for me. It's when you say, it's a repetitive term that says you kind of have a false start and you begin again. And sometimes that's a tick when you're trying to begin a sentence and then you forget where you're going and begin it again. It happens more often than I knew. Okay. And some people have their very unique verbal tics that they do, and you just keep track of those in a kind of a tally form. And then the grammarian who says, no, that sentence structure was incredibly awkward, or you use this really great vocabulary word, which added like a really nice vision to your speech or something. So that's fun.
And this is all kind of like self-organized then.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like the people in it move through, and you become, as time goes on, you become the MC or whatnot.
Exactly. Yep. You can choose to sign up for roles in whatever meeting. So you kind of rotate around roles, and I guess maybe we'll start with something easy like the timer to begin and master that, right? Do a great job. And then you can move on to other things. One of them is a table topics master, and that's one of my favorite parts. You come up with a unique question, and it can be a bunch of questions. Like, I have this bag full of random objects. You can come up to the front and pull an object out of this bag, and then you have to describe why this is the coolest thing that has been invented in the 20th century, right? And so even though you pull out a thing of toilet paper or a pen, you have to then say, okay, impromptu speak for 1 to 2 minutes about this prompt that someone minutes. Yes, it's 1 to 2 minutes, so it's very short, but it gives you the ability to speak like impromptu, really off the cuff. There's no real preparation, but it works on that cohesiveness of keeping it short, keeping it relevant, and allowing yourself to try and be creative in a fun way. So it can be very simple where you just have the same question that everybody comes up and asks, or there's a lot of fun and creative ways people get to make that in. And then at the end, I mean, after these prepared speeches, you have table topics, and then you actually have evaluators that say, here's a 2 to 3 minute speech saying, hey, Eric, you just gave your 5 to 7 minute speech on why you do a podcast, the intricacies, how you do this. And so they kind of give you a compliment sandwich, right? These are the great things you did. Here's your area of improvement. Can't wait to hear a speech that you do, your next speech or something to that effect. So you actually have people critically listening to you who then evaluate how you speak. So there's so many different skills you work on in that 1 hour of time.
Yeah. It has to improve your speaking. Like, did you see a big change in how you spoke?
I think you asked me last time, do they record your first speech? I was like, well, if they recorded my first speech, I would have probably never come back because it would have been awful. But what a cool thing to be a fly on the wall, to hear myself speak the first time. And I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of those new members that join the club, is to hear them progress over time, hear them become more confident, and start to compete. Because this program not only is you pay every 6 months to be involved, but they also have official competitions. So they have an international speaking contest. They have the table topics contest, right, where people compete against each other. They have the evaluation contest, a tall tales contest, a humorous contest. And you actually have contests you can compete in from clubs across the country within Toastmasters. Mm-hmm. And on the site brings you through a very... you get out of it what you put into it, but they can take you through a pathway. It's literally called Pathways. You pick your path. Mine is innovative planning, for instance, that allows you to kind of go step by step through different speeches on how to plan in an effective way. And so it'll have you give speeches on it, have you do projects along with it. So there's a lot of skill building that you can gain from it. I would say it's probably... I'm biased, but probably the most inexpensive way to significantly grow your career, because not only do you work on communication skills, you work on team building, and for $60 every,
that's
like
all
$60 twice a year,
$10 a month. Wow. Mm-hmm. And just the exposure to, it's one thing to go out and speak, but it's another thing to get relevant feedback, where, constructive criticism, and to hear it, like, you probably don't realize what your tics are, what you're doing wrong. And it's until someone actually says, like, hey, this, and it's like, oh, probably had no idea. I don't know. I've never had anyone evaluate my speaking, but I'm sure I do a lot of stuff that's not good or sounds awful, and
Like I had no
it'd be
idea.
very relevant to know that.
Right, like 16 so's in my first speech.
16?
I don't know. Like say that though.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
like
I didn't know
once
if
you
that was
really once you really tally it up for somebody. I'm sure it was, Eric. But is one of my crutches. I can see. So it's really funny to listen to yourself when you actually record it, because you can hear all of those things that you didn't know you said. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't know I spoke like that, but it brings the awareness. And without that awareness, you can't improve. So
I kind of find from doing this and listening to myself, that's one nice thing. I have my first video on here still. I've actually never with the one with Tyler. That was over a year ago. I'm sure my speaking has to have improved since then. I'm not sure, but I'd have to listen back through. But one thing I've really learned is it's not a bad thing. Someone asks you a question, don't just regurgitate the first thing that comes. Like actually sit and kind of, if you have to think for a minute, silence isn't like an awful thing. Sometimes it's best to compose yourself for a couple seconds and then speak, rather than just, I need to get an answer as quickly as possible. So it comes out and it's like, oh, that's not the way I want it to come out. I do that all the time, and I've kind of learned like, take your time.
perfect example. One of the biggest things I learned that was very difficult was to not be afraid of silence. And so often when we speak, if you hear a room that's silent, or you pause to actually listen, like, hey, does anybody have any questions? Okay, let's just jump to the next thing. Instead of allowing the pause to happen or being afraid of that pause, you oftentimes fill it with so or but or rather than just letting yourself pause and having everyone else's brain honestly catch up to what you've been saying.
Yeah.
So there we are. And then we overanalyze what we're saying, and, it's fun to talk about that.
Yeah. I guess if there's a good way to segue into from Toastmasters into probably one of the biggest topics you wanted to talk about was, I guess you go ahead and talk about your, a type 1 diabetic and your experiences and management of it. So I want you to kind of go ahead and.
That was a good, actually, the segue they can make that make sense is probably within 1 to 2 months after my diagnosis, I gave my first Toastmaster speech about it. It was an incredibly vulnerable feeling to say I am a diabetic, because was this like a term I didn't even like saying. It felt unhealthy. It felt strange. But owning that and being able to explain it in a very methodical way was kind of a healing process in a way. So if I back up to diagnosis, what is a type 1 diabetic? Probably it was around, I think it was Halloween. So Halloween's never quite been the same. But I remember it was about October 31st, 4 to 5 years ago at this point. I just felt incredibly stressed, lots of anxiety. I was drinking a ton of water. I could eat as much as I wanted, and I wasn't gaining any weight. So for most people, they would say, wow, Heather, like, I kind of wish I had that problem. But with a type 1 diabetic, what makes it difficult and dangerous is that your pancreas, the insulin-producing organ of your body, quits. So that means I have to begin to think like a pancreas, administer insulin manually like a pancreas, and it impacts every decision from drinking alcohol to eating food to deciding whether or not you need to eat something before you go out for a walk, or everything that you think about and do. So versus a type 2 diabetic who produces insulin, but often it is associated with being overweight or being unhealthy, because even though your pancreas is working really hard to produce that insulin, there's not enough of it to cover your large mass, right? Sometimes it's genetic, so that's not a fair assumption to say everyone is overweight. But it often trends that way for between type 1 and type 2. So that's the significant difference. Is type 1, you're incredibly reliant because you produce zero insulin. So this brain needs to start doing math every time you eat, every time you go out for a walk, every time you make a decision with what you're putting into your body. It's going to take a toll on or make an impact on how much insulin you give yourself.
Basically, everything that we take for granted, you have to do the math and figure out. Because I think, like you said last time, if you eat, you have to figure out how much. Does it depend on how much you eat or the type of foods you eat?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I never have counted carbs in my life,
and now you do.
Suddenly I do, right? And often it's associated with like, it's sugar, right? When you think about like, that a diabetic must have to like keep track of the sugar. Well, sugar does pretty much align well, I think, with carbohydrates when you kind of look at what is in food. But really, it's the carb counting. Like, I never knew how many carbs were in corn or green beans or my cereal and milk and banana that I would eat every day. And I think, oh my gosh, if only I knew how incredibly amount of, carb heavy that was. Maybe I would have switched. But as a healthy person who has a working pancreas, it's a very healthy, nutritious breakfast, as long as it's not like Cocoa Pebbles every day. Now I'm a much more protein and fat focused. So you'd almost call it kind of a ketogenic diet in that way. But believe me, I also love my carbs. So I can't ever say I'm going to throw carbs out the window. But protein and fat is a huge part of my diet.
And basically the insulin, I think you described last time, you eat carbs, it's broken down into glucose. Insulin is released, tells the cells to absorb the glucose.
Exactly.
And that's why you were so thirsty, because you just had glucose circulating with nowhere to go.
Yes, excellent description. So when you stop producing insulin, your cells cannot absorb that. So again, right, all of that glucose is circulating around in your blood system, has nowhere to go. So it's called polyuria, meaning you are drinking a lot of water and urinating all the time to try and pass that glucose out of your system. It's your body's way of coping. And bodies are incredibly resilient. Like, they'll find a way. But I think the delay in the onset of me knowing or doing anything about it was I didn't know the symptoms. It was very gradual over time as my pancreas if I'm going to get technical here, like the beta cells that actually produce insulin were being slowly kind of kicked out of my system over time. So it was a very gradual change so that it didn't, I just kept feeling a little worse and a little worse until you finally got back to that really life-saving insulin regimen. And I didn't realize how much better I could feel by having it reintroduced to my system.
Yeah, once you get your body back in the homeostasis,
yes.
Was it like,
It felt good. I felt my anxiety like go down that I didn't really know existed. And I think thankfully at the time I was training for a half marathon. So I was using a lot of the glucose I was eating by running, which was a huge help to kind of, again, stave off the symptoms I otherwise would have felt.
So if you couldn't, you said you were still using the glucose, but if you couldn't absorb it, like how were you utilizing? I guess I'm just trying to think. You said you were utilizing glucose because you're running a lot. Mm-hmm. So is there another secondary way your body's able to absorb it?
Yeah. So it's your muscles will use glucose or your general activity. Right? Instead of if you're very sedentary and take insulin, right? It's saying, well, you're not doing anything. So let's just absorb all that extra glucose into fat and store it. Otherwise, if I'm training, right, there's going to be other processes, motor functions, active things within your body that will use that glucose instead.
Okay, this is just extra glucose that if you aren't actively walking or running, it's just like that makes
sometimes
sense.
So it's a great point because if I eat too much, it's better and I'm just like, whoa, Heather, you really overate today. It's better for me just to go for a walk and get my glucose to level out than just say, no, instead I'm gonna have eaten all that pie or all those cookies and then sit on the couch and just take the extra insulin. Because what I'm actively saying is I'm going to store this. I'm choosing to store this as fat and I'm not going to work it off, right? It's an ironic way, Eric, that's taught me diabetics have to eat. If you do it well, and no one's perfect, but if you really do it well, you eat like every adult should. Everything in moderation, I say, including moderation itself, because you have to have your cheat days. But you have the sliver of pie and that's it. Or you have what is kind of allowed to you, or you focus on your protein, you focus on the fats that don't really raise your glucose instead. So you can get into trouble that way. But what it does is makes you focus to lay off the carbs. Or I'll choose like the cornbread, or I'll choose the, the higher ranking carb in my mind and say like, I don't need the roll. I'm going to choose to eat the dessert instead. Okay. So you make choices. You don't get it all the time.
It's kind of funny though. You can almost like, not that you would, but it's like, well, if I just go out and walk, I'll absorb and utilize the glucose rather than have to inject myself, and it'll just be stored as body fat. It's just kind of like sitting there waiting. Like, what is she gonna do? That's kind of
because as humans, we are wired to go to the path of least resistance, and when you don't have to actively think about it, it's like if I have this beautiful piece of pie sitting here, I have to say I am going to eat this whole piece of pie, so I have to plan in order to eat this whole piece of pie. So you're actively thinking about preparing to overeat. And it's almost like, oh, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, nope, I'm going to eat the pie and whatever. So it is a good check for myself, right?
It's a complete lifestyle change.
It is, yes.
And it's unfortunate you have to do it, but in a way you'll probably be you're probably healthier than the average person because you have to consciously, every time you eat, think about what you're eating rather than you go to the dessert plate. Well, I'll take some of this, some of that, and you cram it all down and, oh, my stomach hurts, but you wait an hour and it go. You don't have to think about any of that.
And it's a benefit. I mean, as I can look at my watch here, and that's why I love Apple Watch, because they are a really integrated piece of technology. It tracks my glucose. So I wear a continuous glucose monitor attached to me that will give me a report of my blood sugar every 5 minutes. So I can see the trends, the roller coaster, if you will. Hopefully not a steep roller coaster if I'm doing things right. That say, hey, you're getting low, you might need to eat something, or hey, whoa, you're in the 200s or something. So if I'm relative, a normal adult has a blood sugar between like 80 and 120.
Okay.
So that's the goal kind of you're shooting for. But like if you have to manually do it all the time, I can be up in the 200s. I've hit the 300s before, and it's like, whoa. Like,
what were you in the beginning, like before you
Eric,
even...
I can't even. I was off the charts. I remember. I know that I can know the number. It was 426. But people go into the ER in diabetic ketoacidosis, meaning they are spilling so much glucose that their body's literally like shutting down, and they're 800s. It's an incredibly unhealthy state, and they're wasting away because their body hasn't been able to store any of that glucose. Right, they're in an incredibly farther gone state than I was at the time.
So they're extremely malnourished, but they're eating like you can eat like a pig.
You can eat like absolute pig, and you can't absorb any of it. I know. It's a weird right? It's a weird thing to think about. It is. I know.
It really is. But like you said, if you manage it, you can live a really normal life. When you live a normal like.
Exactly. I would say of anything, I feel. I would never go as far to say that it's a blessing in disguise, but it's made me reappreciate and recognize not to take the nourishment that we put into our bodies or the exercise we get to do every day for granted. And I'm selective, right, with what I choose to eat. So
yeah,
I appreciate it.
Well, didn't you say milk is dairy? It's high protein, low carb. It's actually a good food to eat if you're a diabetic.
Yeah. So connecting all the dots, right? Talking about being a dairy advocate, right? Being in Toastmasters, YDLI, right? And then also connecting that to type 1. I mean, my brain has gone through, how do I make a platform to say, here I am, a unique condition of type 1, right? When you are first diagnosed, with many people, not only in my position, but a lot of other very hard diagnoses or life events they go through, it can feel very isolating to be rocked of the way things used to be. But when you are, there's these blips of community that come out of nowhere to say, hey, did you know I've gone through the same thing? Or don't worry, I know that you feel this way. I've been able to manage it. Or this is how we manage it, or whatever. So in not only my case, but there's a lot of other scenarios you apply that to, is it's not something people wear on their sleeve, but you can find a lot of those with shared experiences. Once you recognize and reach out for that community, there's so much support out there, which is wonderful.
That is one cool thing about social media. You have those support groups, that camaraderie of you aren't alone, or because it's gotta help.
And so to connect all those, right? How do you say, hey, like I want to marry a platform that's like an ag advocate, person who's like an upstanding citizen, who is a generally healthy person who has type 1, who really loves dairy products because they're high protein, right? Low sugar, especially the ultra filtered. Like I do really love Fairlife. That's something I have adopted since being a type 1 because it's high protein, low sugar, and low carb. So it's been a good staple. I love Faye, again, plain yogurt. I will mix a lot of peanut butter in it. I'm such a peanut butter fiend, Eric. It's not even funny. But I'll put a lot of fat and protein together in a lot of things that I eat. But just trying to think of a way to marry those different focuses into some kind of a platform to advocate for agriculture. I just haven't found the right tag name yet. So trying to think about how to marry type 1 with dairy advocacy and all those fun things. So I've got a list somewhere. I think I came up with 26 random username generator types of ideas, and I've got to go through them.
The generators, or you ought to ask people at your YDLI thing.
Exactly, I know.
Pick their brain, find out. It's a lot of it. You'll ask someone, then they'll think of they're on a totally different wavelength. Like, oh, how about this name? It's like, oh, I never even thought about that. So that's kind of in the future what you're hoping to do.
Yeah.
Is something like that.
Right. And I think sometimes getting into the environment like we will be this coming February, when this new class of YDLIers down in Texas, you have the week or the 4 days in this case to have some really immersive focus time. Because otherwise you don't really find the time to set aside. But when you can be there and when you can kind of get motivated by a lot of people and create kind of a roadmap for yourself, if I've got a timeline, I'm going to stick to it. And there's a lot of benefit you can get from being among people who are more creative than myself to teach me the things I'm not thinking about. So, yeah. There's a lot of good things that can come from it. It's all how you look at it, right? Be a positive person and think about it in a positive way. So,
it's kind of funny. I just had a conversation with a buddy of mine going out to John's birthday party. He got Lyme's disease 4, 5, 6 years ago. Ugh. And he dealt with that. And whenever I talked to him, I was, how you doing? He's like, I'm doing better. But he's same sort of thing. It's like you have to learn just to live and manage it. And it's like he told me, he said there were times where, man, I could have gone completely negative and down. He didn't. He stuck with it.
Right.
And he's very positive, and he's doing great, and he's basically living a normal life. Like he said, manages it. But he said, boy, there were times where I just, you feel like you just want to take a left-hand turn. And he said it can get real dark really quick if you go down that road. So he said, it all depends on how well you react to it, I guess. I feel, I tell him I don't have to deal with any of this stuff. There's days where, oh man, I don't feel good. But then it's like, man, I don't have to deal with any of I have friends who have all these health issues. Like, man, I have nothing to complain about. I have nothing to complain about.
Yep. And it's all right. I mean, it's all relative. It's all relative because we are all informed in our own way, but our mind is wired to compare things, and often. Right? You can find a lot more things, I think, to be thankful for than you can to complain about. And if you're not that type of person, well, I probably don't associate with you. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you're probably very negative and miserable.
Because you're the product of the 6 people, 6 closest people you hang around with. If they're positive people, likely you're going to follow and align with those same habits.
Yeah, that's very true. The older I get, the more I realize that's very true. A lot of that, the people you're around really dictate the type of person you're going to be, or who you're becoming, or who you became.
Yep.
So it's kind of funny how people drop in and out as you move through life.
Yep. People you thought you'd be friends with, maybe not so much, and then
or you're so friendly with them, but you don't see them very often.
Yep.
It's where it's like high school to college. I really communicate with a lot of my college friends, more than my high school friends. Not that I'm not still friends with them, just that's kind of a phase, and then the next phase, and they're kind of the ones you stick it out with I think it's because you lived together, you saw each other at your highs and lows, and so you really know each other better than the high school buddies. But that's been my experience.
I agree. Yep. So. There's a lot of shared experiences. I think we talked about that last time. Like, when else can you live in the same place with all of your best friends for 4 years? Not often.
No. Yeah, and not have to like have some people have a job. Not like you have a job. You're kind of it's an interesting experience, a good experience to have for sure. But I don't know if there's I think last time you showed off your you're newly engaged. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. I would say Andrew and I got engaged back in September.
You're blocking your ring there, Heather.
Sorry. Thanks, Eric. Good product placement. Yes, we got engaged back September 1. I moved here August 1st, and a month later, I said, "Are you sure, Andrew? We haven't lived together for very long. Are you sure that you could live with me?" He seemed to think so. So we have our date scheduled for August 27th this year. So that's going to be here in 8 months. Yeah, 8 months or so.
Yeah, wow, that'll be here quick.
I know. But that's it's all good. I think him and I talk a lot about these topics. He's a really positive person, very intelligent, and I think we're a good partnership because there's a lot of things we can talk about and have fun conversations about, and also just kind of also say things that are not very intelligent, and and you can
laugh about
it together.
Compliment each other very well.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what makes it a good relationship.
Well, I'm very happy for the both of you.
Yeah.
You guys. I think you guys are very well fit for one another.
Thank you. So. Me too.
But anyway, I guess is there anything else you wanted to touch on, or you have pretty?
This has been great, Eric. I think it's a lot of fun to. Obviously, everybody likes to talk about themselves. I feel a little selfish sitting here only talking about me for this time. I know that's,
that's why I have you on.
That's why
it's
you
more interesting
have the
to
point.
Talk. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it's interesting to get to know people sometimes at a deeper level. It's you learn something new. Like I said, I usually learn something new every time I have someone. I've known you for 10 years or however
exactly.
long now.
Yeah.
Just,
we've gone to Germany. We've gone to Italy. California together.
All over.
Cheers. Many beers together.
Many beers. These are probably the more fancier beers
I know.
you shared together.
That's very true. I know. We've graduated from
the
Keystone
Light. But that all has its time and its place, right?
It does. Yep.
But well, I guess if you're all good, I guess thanks for coming back on. And the audio, I've been checking it. If you see me looking over, I'm just making sure because I made it so even if it did lose audio, I have like a backup.
Oh, great. See, this is the stuff you can teach me because I don't know how to do that.
Like when that happened, I was like, okay, I'm really ticked at myself. I was so angry at myself. And I'm like, how do I make it so it never happens again?
Yeah.
Fix the problem.
Believe me, I've had dead batteries. I haven't had a plan B, and it's the worst feeling. So it's the best way to learn, right?
Yeah.
That's what they tell you.
It's gonna sound. I'm like, at least it happened with someone like Heather, where I know I call you up and I give you the bad news, but you aren't like, it's not like someone who had to drive 2 hours to get here.
No.
And I don't really know
literally
them.
5 minutes down the road.
I'm like, it has to happen to someone. Like if it's you or Andrew or Tyler, it's like at least you'll understand, and it's not a big deal to come back out here on a Saturday afternoon and chat for an hour. So,
right.
Like I said, I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
But I guess we'll sign off then, and thanks everyone for listening in. Thanks, Heather, and
thank you.
I'll catch everyone in the next video.